The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Hi, I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am here today with Rongrong Xiang, and we're going to be talking about weather stations in today's Canola School. So welcome, Rongrong. It is wonderful to see you.
Yeah, you too. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And beautiful day out to have an episode here and talking about weather stations.
Yeah, so let's actually just dive into it.
Sure.
Let's get into weather stations. So we are going to be talking about them in reference to canola.
Yes.
And what would be some of the reasons that a farmer might want to have them installed? Let's just start at the basics there.
Yeah, so weather stations, it's actually quite commonly adopted on the farm now. It's really useful because it actually captures localized data, more so environmental, right, to give you an insight what's going on at the field level. So usually if you look at a basic unit of a weather station, it contains multiple sensors to capture temperature. Usually it has an anemometer to capture the wind speed as well, which is very important for spraying. And then we have the rain gauge or a modified version of it to capture the liquid precipitation throughout the season.
Okay, and do they monitor soil temperature as well?
Yeah, so depending on the manufacturer, a soil moisture probe could be available as an add-on. So it is particularly useful for people who have irrigation, especially, down in southern Alberta. So, it's actually pretty neat. It does give you a moisture rating at a various soil depth. So, whether or not to put down more moisture, more water when it's needed just to maintain that field capacity.
Well, I imagine it'd be pretty interesting just to see how much of that moisture is actually getting into the soil, right? So what temperature and weather conditions are ideal for canola, and how could a weather station help a grower maintain those specifications?
Right, so canola, it is a cool season crop, so it thrives in moderate climates. So that being said, if it's too hot, too cold, canola doesn't like it. And same goes for moisture level as well. So if it is either excessive moisture or, a prolonged dry spell, not canola's biggest fine. So when it comes to canola development, there's certain growth stage that it is more sensitive to extreme conditions. So, when we look at early spring, right, the canola is at the colony stage. So when we go back to weather station, look at some of temperature data, the overnight temperature drops below or getting closer to that near freezing point for a certain amount of time, then it is a really good indicator to go out, scout for potential frost damage a day or two later. So right now, the canola is actually at flowering stage. What we wanted to watch out for is if it's getting too hot for canola, right? So compared to, canola at vegetative stage, then it is more prone to heat stress. So when we look at temperature, usually we focus on the daily maximum temperature. If it's getting over to 30 degrees or hotter, then there is a risk of heat blast. But then canola does have a chance to recover if the night temperature drops below 15 degrees. So, when we review the data from the weather station, it's good to focus on both maximum daily high and then the overtime low.
Okay, so let's talk about the other thing a weather station can do, because they can record wind speed, right? And that ends up...
direction too.
A direction too, there we go. And that, of course, ends up changing when, maybe, and what type of herbicide you might want to use. Yeah. So can you speak into that a little bit?
So when people decided to spray, the first thing they're looking for is wind speed, right? So of course, if it's way too breezy in the morning, then it's better to hold off in the rolling with the sprayer when it's calmer. But temperature is just as important, because when we spray, especially, for pre-burn herbicides, we want to watch for cold temperature the night before, because if it's too cold, the weed is also under cold stress, then it's not actively growing. We wanted to wait for, a warmer part of the day to spray your herbicide, so then the weed is already recovered from cold stress, and then actively moving that chemical within to achieve that maximum efficacy. So when we're looking at, in crop chemical application, whether it's for herbicide, fungicide, or even insecticides, do not spray when it's too hot because we might expect a very increased crop response.
Right. And so having that weather station just kind of puts all that information into one place.
It's
right?
really efficient
For the growers. With the weather conditions we've had, and this year I know growers, one of the things that are top of mind right now is sclerotinia. So how could a weather station maybe help with the decision on whether or not to spray a fungicide?
Yeah, so sclerotinia, it is one of the main key diseases in canola production for sure. And then a fungicide decision is primarily dependent on how much moisture we're getting in the year. But weather station is definitely going to help to support that decision by looking at specifically the environment condition during that canopy closure period. So, what we're looking at is, have we seen prolonged wet soil conditions over 10 days? And also, during this period, if the temperature is kind of falling between 15 to 25 degrees, because those are the two conducive conditions for sclerotia germination and spore production. And sclerotia, it is the overwintering body of sclerotinia. So, if the conditions are conducive, then that's going to prep this disease for infection during the flowering time. But again, when we look at weather station data, we also wanted to see in the forecast, are we expecting more moisture during flowering and also a high rate of humidity? So moisture, a lot of people would think, oh yeah, more rainfall. Not necessarily, because at this specific time of the year, when you walk your field in early morning, you are going to see heavy dew. So that the water from heavy dew will be enough for sclerotia germination with combined temperature between that 20 to 25 degrees. So, something to watch out for.
And that's strange because most people don't think about the heavy dew part, right? You think, oh, well, there's no rain, we're good.
Yes. And also, if we just wanted to focus on the disease development, there's so many factors to, factor it in to estimate the risk of sclerotinia. But we'll look at weather conditions, right? So those are the two factors we look at, really. So at the end of the day, if we do expect those weather conditions to happen, or if we have experiencing those environment conditions during the canopy closure period, do consider a passive fungicide application so that it's best protect the crop from the disease and get the crop to be closer to its yield potential.
Well, that's a lot of great information, Rongrong. Is there anything that you'd like to say to encourage producers in this growing season and as they move forward?
So weather station is definitely a very unique and very useful tool to have on farm because it does, provide a lot of good information to help our growers to understand how the crop performs throughout the season. But also it has really good data to really help making decisions and, to set proper expectations on, chemical efficacy and when or whether to spray a passive chemical.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And that was Rongrong Xiang on Real Agriculture.